Boarding gate B4 went completely silent. A furious agent violently ripped a first-class ticket from Elena's hand, loudly sneering that people like her belonged in coach. Security marched forward, silver handcuffs unclipped and ready. However, this brilliant black mother wasn't just any regular passenger to bully. She quickly produced her phone, making one terrifyingly calm call. Within moments, Global Airlines' entire corporate legal department started scrambling. Listen to a true story detailing an epic mistake one arrogant airline ever made. The air inside Chicago's O'Hare International Airport was thick with the usual symphony of frantic announcements, rolling suitcases, and the low hum of thousands of travelers rushing to their destinations. But for Elena Langford, the chaos was nothing more than background noise. Elena was a woman who lived her life in high-definition focus. As a senior partner at Whitaker & Associates, one of the most ruthless and elite corporate litigation firms in the country, she spent her days dismantling multi-billion-dollar mergers and striking fear into the hearts of Fortune 500 executives. Today, however, she was just a mother. Holding her hand was her young son, Miles. Miles was vibrating with the pure, unadulterated excitement that only a child about to board a massive Boeing 777 could possess. He wore a crisp little polo shirt and carried a small, bright yellow backpack filled with coloring books and action figures. For Elena, this trip to London was technically business. A critical deposition awaited her at the end of the week, but she had deliberately turned it into a vacation for Miles. She had worked long hours for months, missing bedtimes and soccer games, to secure the kind of life where she could afford to drop significant money on 2 first-class lie-flat seats across the Atlantic without blinking. They had spent the last stretch of time in the Global Airlines first-class lounge. Even there, Elena had noticed the familiar lingering stares, the subtle tightening of the receptionist's smile when she handed over her black card, the way the bartender had served the older white gentleman next to her before acknowledging her, despite Elena having been there first. It was the quiet, insidious hum of microaggressions that Elena had dealt with her entire life. She was a highly successful, impeccably dressed black woman in a space where society implicitly told her she was a guest. Not a resident, she had long ago learned to armor herself against it, brushing it off like lint on her tailored blazer. "Mom, are we really sitting in the pods?" Miles asked, tugging at her sleeve as they made their way toward gate B4. "The ones with the TVs that fold out?" "Yes, baby." Elena smiled, her sharp features softening instantly. "We have the best seats on the whole plane, seats 1A and 1B, right at the front." "Awesome," Miles whispered, his eyes wide. As they approached gate B4, the crowd was already swelling. The digital display above the desk flashed, "Flight to London Heathrow, on time." Elena checked her gold watch. It was time before departure. Group 1 boarding was about to commence. She guided Miles to the priority lane, bypassing the long, winding line of economy passengers. The priority lane was empty, save for a few business travelers who glanced at her, their expressions a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Elena pulled up the digital boarding passes on her phone. The glowing screen proudly displayed their status. First-class priority boarding confirmed. Behind the desk stood 2 gate agents. One was a young man frantically typing on a keyboard, looking overwhelmed. The other was a woman wearing a tightly pinned navy blue scarf and a name tag that read, Brittany Langford. Brittany had the kind of rigid, unyielding posture that suggested she enjoyed the tiny sliver of authority her job provided. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are now inviting our first-class and Diamond Elite members to board through the priority lane," the overhead speaker crackled. Elena smiled down at Miles. "That's us. Ready?" "Ready," Miles cheered. Elena stepped up to the scanner, holding her phone out. She placed the QR code over the glass. Instead of the pleasant chiming ding that signaled clearance, the machine emitted a harsh, jarring buzz. The screen flashed a bright, angry red. Elena frowned. "That's strange. Let me try again." She wiped the screen of her phone, assuming a smudge was interfering with the scanner, and placed it down again. Buzz. Brittany Langford stepped forward, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. She didn't look concerned. She looked expectant, almost smug. "I'm going to need you to step aside, ma'am," Brittany said, her voice dripping with a sickly sweet, practiced condescension. "You're blocking the boarding lane for our premium passengers." "I am a premium passenger," Elena replied, her voice steady and polite. "There seems to be a glitch with the scanner. We are in 1A and 1B. Brittany didn't even look at the phone Elena was holding out. Instead, she let out a short, patronizing sigh. "I highly doubt that. Let me see your reservation." Elena felt the familiar, icy prickle of adrenaline at the back of her neck. The lawyer inside her, the apex predator of the boardroom, cracked open an eye. But the mother in her kept her voice smooth. She handed her phone to Brittany. Brittany glanced at the screen, then typed something into her terminal. Her fingers hammered the keys with unnecessary force. A receipt printed out from the small machine beside her. Brittany snatched it, tore it off, and handed it to Elena with a tight, triumphant smile. "Just as I thought," Brittany said loudly, ensuring the growing line of first-class passengers behind Elena could hear. "There's been an equipment change. Your seats have been reassigned to 34E and 34F. That's in the main cabin, Group 5. You'll need to step out of the priority lane and wait until your group is called." Elena stared at the flimsy piece of thermal paper. 34E and 34F. Middle seats, right next to the aft lavatories. "Excuse me," Elena said, her voice dropping an octave, cooling the air around them. "I paid significant money for 2 first-class pods. I have the receipts. I have the confirmation. There was no equipment change. I can literally see the Boeing 777 sitting right outside the window. Airline policy dictates that we reserve the right to alter seating arrangements due to operational necessities," Brittany recited robotically, crossing her arms. "We will process a partial refund for the fare difference in the coming weeks. Now, please step aside. You are holding up my first-class line." Before Elena could respond, a voice boomed from behind her. "Is there a problem here?" Elena turned. Standing uncomfortably close to her was an older red-faced white man in a heavy cashmere overcoat. He carried a leather briefcase and reeked of expensive scotch and impatience. "No problem at all, Mr. Langford." Brittany suddenly beamed, her entire demeanor shifting from hostile to sycophantic. "Just a minor ticketing confusion with this passenger. Please go right ahead." Marcus Langford scoffed, eyeing Elena and Miles with blatant distaste. "People trying to sneak in where they don't belong. Typical." He slapped his paper boarding pass onto the scanner. Elena's sharp eyes caught the bold black ink on the paper before it was pulled away. "Langford, Marcus. Seat 1A. The realization hit Elena like a physical blow, not of shock, but of sheer, unadulterated outrage. There had been no equipment change. There had been no system glitch. The airline had overbooked, or perhaps this Marcus Langford had shown up at the last minute demanding a seat. And Brittany Langford had simply decided that the black woman and her child were the easiest targets to downgrade. "Seat 1A, Elena said, her voice cutting through the noise of the terminal like a diamond through glass. Marcus Langford stopped, turning back to look at her. "Excuse me, that is my seat," Elena stated, stepping directly into Marcus's path, blocking him from the jet bridge. She did not raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her tone was laced with the kind of lethal authority that made opposing counsel sweat through their suits. "I booked that seat months ago." "Look, lady," Marcus sneered, his face flushing a deeper shade of red. "I am a Diamond Elite Titanium member. I fly this route regularly. My company spends millions with TransGlobal. If they bumped you, it's because you're low priority. Take your middle seats in the back and be grateful you're on the plane." "Mr. Langford is correct," Brittany chimed in, stepping out from behind the desk. She was flanked by the younger gate agent, who looked visibly panicked. "Ma'am, I am asking you for the last time to step out of the boarding area. You are causing a disturbance." Miles gripped Elena's hand tightly, hiding slightly behind her leg. "Mommy, what's happening? Are we not going on the pods?" Elena looked down at her son. She saw the confusion and the rising fear in his eyes. In that microsecond, a switch flipped deep inside Elena's soul. She had spent her life playing by the rules, excelling, outworking everyone in the room, just to be treated with a baseline of respect. She was not about to let her son learn that his place in the world was at the back of the line, simply because someone like Brittany or Marcus decided it was. Elena turned her gaze back to Brittany. The gate agent actually took a half step back, startled by the sheer intensity in the lawyer's eyes. "Let me explain something to you, Brittany," Elena said, slowly articulating every syllable with terrifying precision. "According to the Department of Transportation regulations, involuntary denied boarding or an involuntary downgrade requires the airline to first solicit volunteers. Did you ask for volunteers?" Brittany blinked, clearly thrown off guard by the legal terminology. That's not relevant here. It is entirely relevant. Furthermore," Elena continued, stepping closer to the desk, "in the event of an involuntary downgrade, the passenger is legally entitled to a written statement describing their rights and compensation issued immediately at the airport, not in the coming weeks. You bypassed federal protocols to gift my seats to a corporate VIP because you profiled me and assumed I didn't know my rights." "I'm not profiling anyone," Brittany stammered, her voice shrill, drawing the attention of dozens of passengers waiting in the terminal. Phones were beginning to slide out of pockets. The red lights of camera recordings blinked in the periphery. "You canceled my confirmed ticket to accommodate him." Elena pointed a manicured finger at Marcus Langford, who was now shifting uncomfortably under the collective gaze of the crowd. "That is a breach of contract. I am holding a valid, paid-in-full first-class boarding pass on my application, and I am going to board this aircraft." Elena took Miles's hand and bypassed Brittany entirely, walking past the desk and heading straight toward the mouth of the jet bridge. "Hey, you can't do that!" Marcus shouted. "Security!" Brittany shrieked, grabbing a radio from her belt. "I have a security breach at gate B4. Disruptive passenger is forcing her way onto the aircraft. Send the police immediately." Elena didn't stop. She marched down the sloping ribbed floor of the jet bridge, the smell of aviation fuel and sterile air conditioning washing over her. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, but her face was a mask of absolute chilling composure. She knew the law. She knew exactly where the lines were drawn. Until she set foot on that aircraft and refused a direct order from the captain, she was entirely within her rights as a ticketed passenger attempting to claim her legally purchased property. Behind her, she could hear the heavy footsteps of Brittany and Marcus rushing to catch up. "You are committing a federal offense!" Brittany's scream echoed, bouncing off the metal walls of the tunnel. Elena reached the end of the jet bridge. The massive metallic door of the Boeing 777 was open. Standing inside the pristine, glowing cabin of the first-class section was the lead flight attendant, a tall woman with blonde hair pulled into a severe twist, wearing a badge that read, Lena Hart. Lena Hart had clearly been alerted by the gate desk. As Elena approached the threshold of the plane, Lena stepped forward, physically blocking the doorway with her body. "Ma'am, you need to stop right there," Lena commanded, holding up her hands. Elena halted just inches from the aircraft door. "I am Elena Langford. I am ticketed for seat 1A. I am boarding. The gate agent has informed me that your ticket has been reissued for the main cabin, Lena said coldly. If you try to step onto my aircraft without the proper boarding pass for this cabin, I will have you arrested for interfering with a flight crew. The situation had officially reached critical mass. Behind Elena, Brittany Langford arrived, panting, her face flushed with a mixture of exertion and malicious triumph. Marcus Langford was right on her heels, crossing his arms and looking at Elena with a smug, self-satisfied grin. The airport police are on their way, Brittany announced breathlessly, pointing a trembling finger at Elena. You are going to be placed on the no-fly list for this, you and your kid. At the mention of police, Miles finally broke. The tension, the yelling, the hostile faces. It was too much for a young child. He buried his face into Elena's leg and began to sob quietly. "Mommy, please," Miles cried, his little shoulders shaking. "Let's just go home. I don't want the pods anymore. I don't want the police to come." Elena looked down at her weeping child. The anger inside her crystallized into something much colder, much heavier, and infinitely more dangerous. She knelt down on the dirty carpet of the jet bridge, ignoring the furious airline staff, and cupped Miles's face in her hands. "Miles, look at me," Elena whispered softly, wiping a tear from his cheek. "Do you remember what I tell you about bullies?" Miles sniffled, nodding, slowly. You don't back down. You make them follow the rules." "Exactly," Elena said, kissing his forehead. "Mommy is going to make sure they follow the rules. You have nothing to be afraid of. I promise you." She stood up. The maternal softness vanished, replaced entirely by the senior partner of Whitaker and Associates. Elena Langford had destroyed multinational corporations for breakfast. A petty gate agent and a prejudiced flight crew were less than dust to her. She took 3 steps back from the aircraft door, giving Lena the physical space required by law, so as not to be accused of physical intimidation. "You have made a grave error," Elena said, her voice echoing in the confined space of the jet bridge. She looked at Brittany, then at Lena, and finally at Marcus Langford. "You have assumed that because I am a black woman traveling alone with her child, I lack the resources to defend myself against your blatant discriminatory breach of contract." "Oh, save the race card," Marcus groaned, rolling his eyes. "Just arrest her and let's go. I have a meeting in Mayfair tomorrow." "We're not playing games here, ma'am," Lena said, her tone dripping with fake sympathy. "Surrender your boarding pass, accept your new seat, or I am authorizing the police to remove you in handcuffs." "You won't be doing anything of the sort," Elena replied softly. She reached into her designer blazer and pulled out her phone. She didn't dial a customer service hotline. She didn't open social media to complain. She opened her contacts and selected a number that was meant to be used only in absolute corporate emergencies. The number belonged to Victor Lang. Victor Lang was a legend in the legal world. He was the founder of her firm, a man who played golf with senators and had federal judges on his speed dial. But more importantly, for this exact moment, Whitaker and Associates was the primary outside legal counsel for the largest aerospace manufacturing company in the world, the very company that Transglobal Airlines leased the majority of its fleet from, including the Boeing 777 they were standing in front of. The phone rang twice. "Elena," Victor's gravelly voice answered. "It's the weekend. You're supposed to be over the Atlantic." "Victor, I have a situation at O'Hare," Elena said, her eyes locked dead onto Brittany's face. "Are you all right? Is Miles okay?" Victor's tone shifted instantly from casual to sharp. "We are physically unharmed," Elena said, clearly ensuring her voice projected. "But Transglobal Airlines has just engaged in a discriminatory, involuntary downgraded Gate B4, breaching a significant contract to seat a corporate VIP. The gate agent, Brittany Langford, and the lead flight attendant, Lena Hart, are currently threatening me with federal arrest of my child to cover up their violation of DOT regulations." Brittany scoffed loudly. "Who are you calling? Your lawyer? You think a lawyer is going to stop a flight?" Elena ignored her. "Victor, I need you to make a call." There was a brief pause on the line. When Victor spoke next, his voice was pure ice. "What do you need, Elena?" "I want the CEO of Transglobal Airlines, Victor Hale, on the phone with the station manager of O'Hare within moments," Elena ordered, her voice echoing with devastating authority. "Remind Mr. Hale that our firm is currently negotiating the lease renewal for multiple wide-body aircraft, and tell him that if my son and I are not seated in 1A and 1B immediately, I will personally file a federal discrimination lawsuit. By morning, I will subpoena the gate security footage, and I will freeze the aircraft lease negotiations pending a full Department of Justice inquiry into their passenger handling practices." The silence in the jet bridge was sudden and absolute. Marcus Langford's smug smile faltered. Lena Hart's hand dropped from the doorframe. Brittany stared at Elena, her mouth slightly open, a sudden creeping realization beginning to dawn in her eyes that she might have just kicked a hornet's nest of apocalyptic proportions. "Give me a moment," Victor Lang said, and hung up. Elena lowered the phone. She didn't put it away. She simply held it in her hand, staring down the three people who had tried to humiliate her. "Now," Elena said, her voice a deadly whisper. "We wait." At the top of the jet bridge, the heavy doors burst open, and 4 armed airport police officers marched in, their radios squawking. They pushed past the lingering passengers, their hands resting on their utility belts, faces grim. "Who's the disruptive passenger?" the lead officer barked, zeroing in on Elena. Brittany's eyes lit up with renewed confidence. She pointed a trembling finger at Elena. "Her! Arrest her! She's threatening the airline!" But before the officer could take a single step toward Elena, the radio on his shoulder exploded with static, followed by a frantic screaming voice from dispatch. "Unit 4, stand down. I repeat, Unit 4, stand down. Do not touch the passenger." The officer froze. At the exact same moment, the heavy red emergency phone mounted on the wall inside the aircraft door. The phone reserved solely for direct critical communication with corporate headquarters began to ring with a shrill, piercing alarm. Lena Hart stared at the red phone, the color completely draining from her face. Elena Langford simply smiled. "You might want to answer that." The emergency phone mounted inside the bulkhead of the Boeing 777 was entirely unremarkable to the average passenger. Encased in a small recessed plastic cubby, painted a sterile industrial red, it looked like a relic from a bygone era of aviation. But to flight crews, it was the God phone. It was hardwired directly to Transglobal Airlines' Global Operations Control Center. It bypassed standard radio frequencies, weather interference, and standard dispatchers. When the red phone rang, it meant an aircraft was on fire, a bomb threat had been verified, or the federal government was ordering the plane grounded. It had never, in Lena Hart's career as a flight attendant, rung during the boarding process. The shrill mechanical blare sliced through the heavy tension of the jet bridge like a scalpel. The 4 armed airport police officers who had frozen at the dispatch order exchanged bewildered glances. "Lena," Brittany Langford stammered, her voice stripped of all its previous bravado, reduced to a terrified squeak. "Lena, what is that?" Lena swallowed hard, her throat suddenly bone dry. She looked from the red phone to the impassive, unyielding face of Elena Langford, and back to the phone. Her hands trembled as she reached out, unclipped the heavy receiver, and brought it to her ear. "Lead Flight Attendant Lena speaking," she said, her voice shaking so badly the words barely formed. Even from a short distance away, Elena could hear the sheer volume of the voice detonating on the other end of the line. It was not the standard measured tone of a dispatch operator. It was the furious, panic-laced roar of a man whose career was flashing before his eyes. "What in the name of God is happening at Gate B4?" The voice bellowed through the earpiece. "Sir," Lena stuttered. "I'm sorry, who is this?" "This is Elliot Graves, Executive Vice President of Global Operations. I have the CEO, Victor Hale, on another line with the chairman of Whitaker and Associates, and they are threatening to freeze a multi-billion-dollar fleet lease because you and your gate agent are attempting to arrest a senior partner." Lena's knees actually buckled slightly. She grabbed the frame of the aircraft door to steady herself. The blood drained from her face so fast she looked vaguely translucent. "Mr. Graves," Lena gasped. "There was an equipment swap in the gate agent. Brittany." "Shut up!" Graves screamed. "Do not say another word. Do not try to defend this. You did not have an equipment swap. I am looking at the flight manifest right now. You illegally bumped a full-fare passenger to accommodate an upgrade. You violated federal involuntary denied boarding protocols. And you did it to the one woman in Chicago who can personally bankrupt this airline." In the background of the call, Lena could hear a secondary voice, a deeper, calmer, but infinitely more terrifying voice. It was Victor Hale, the CEO himself, shouting at someone else in the boardroom. "Get the station manager down there right now. If that plane leaves without Elena Langford in seat 1A, I'm firing the entire Chicago O'Hare management team." Elliot Graves came back on the line, his breathing ragged. "Listen to me very carefully, Lena. You are to treat Ms. Langford as if she owns the aircraft, because if she decides to pursue this, she practically will. You are to immediately seat her in her original booking. You are to grovel. You are to offer her whatever she wants. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Mr. Graves," Lena whispered, a single tear of absolute terror leaking from the corner of her eye. But Marcus Langford is already boarded in 1A. "Then drag him out by his collar," Graves exploded. "I don't care if he's the Pope. Get him out of that seat. The O'Hare station manager is sprinting down the terminal right now. Do nothing until he arrives. Do not let those police officers touch her." The line went dead with a loud click. Lena slowly hung up the red receiver. She turned back to face the jet bridge. The atmosphere had undergone a catastrophic shift. Brittany was hyperventilating, clutching her clipboard to her chest like a shield. Marcus Langford was tapping his foot, completely oblivious to the corporate nuclear strike that had just been ordered against him. "Well," Marcus demanded, checking his watch, "are you going to arrest this woman or what? I'm missing my pre-flight champagne." Before Lena could respond, the heavy steel doors at the top of the jet bridge slammed open again. Footsteps thundered down the sloping tunnel. It was not a walk. It was a desperate, chaotic sprint. A middle-aged man in a soaking wetsuit, his tie flying over his shoulder, was running toward them with the sheer desperation of a man running from a burning building. His face was purple with exertion, and he was waving his hands wildly. This was Derek Hale, the station manager for Transglobal Airlines at O'Hare. He oversaw thousands of employees, and he looked like he was about to vomit. "Stop!" Derek screamed, his voice cracking as he skidded to a halt in front of the police officers, nearly knocking Brittany over in the process. "Everyone stand down. Nobody move." Derek doubled over, resting his hands on his knees, gasping for air. His chest heaved as he fought to regain his breath. He looked up, his wild, terrified eyes scanning the small crowd until they locked onto Elena. Elena stood perfectly still, her posture immaculate, one hand resting protectively on Miles's small shoulder. She raised an eyebrow. "Ms. Langford," Derek wheezed, straightening up and frantically smoothing his disheveled hair. "Ms. Elena Langford?" "That would be me," Elena replied softly. "I'm Derek Hale. I am the station manager for O'Hare," he stammered, extending a trembling hand. When Elena made no move to take it, he quickly withdrew it, wiping the sweat from his forehead. "Ms. Langford, on behalf of the CEO of Transglobal Airlines, Victor Hale, and the entire executive board, I am so profoundly, deeply sorry. There has been a catastrophic, inexcusable error. The silence that followed the station manager's apology was heavier than a bank vault door. Brittany Langford let out a small, strangled gasp. Her clipboard slipped from her numb fingers, clattering loudly against the metal floor of the jet bridge. The reality of her situation was finally crashing down upon her. She hadn't just bullied a vulnerable mother. She had picked a fight with a corporate leviathan, and her bosses were currently sacrificing her to save the ship. "Derek," Brittany whispered, looking at Derek Hale. "Mr. Hale, she was refusing to step aside. She was disruptive." Derek turned to Brittany. The terrified, groveling demeanor he had shown Elena vanished, replaced by the lethal fury of a middle manager who realized his subordinate had just ruined his life. "You are suspended, Brittany," Derek snarled, stepping into her personal space. "Effective immediately, pending a full recorded termination hearing tomorrow morning. Hand over your badge." "What?" Brittany shrieked, her face twisting in shock. "You can't do that. I was protecting a Diamond Elite member. Mr. Langford needed a seat." "I don't give a damn about Mr. Langford," Derek roared, the sheer volume making Miles flinch. Elena quickly pulled her son behind her legs, shielding him from the escalating chaos. Derek pointed a shaking finger at the terminal doors. "Give me your badge and get out of my sight before I have these officers arrest you for violating federal DOT guidelines." Trembling violently, Brittany unclipped the plastic badge from her uniform. Tears of humiliation streamed down her heavily powdered cheeks. She handed it to Derek, shot one venomous, tear-soaked glare at Elena, and turned, fleeing up the jet bridge as fast as her heels would carry her. "Now wait just a damn minute," Marcus Langford growled, stepping forward, his chest puffed out in indignation. The sheer audacity of the situation was finally penetrating his thick layer of entitlement. "You're suspending her for helping me? Do you have any idea who I am, Hale? I am Marcus Langford. I am the VP of Acquisitions for Northgate Capital. I fly hundreds of thousands of miles a year with this airline." Derek took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. "Mr. Langford, I apologize for the inconvenience, but there has been a ticketing error. Seat 1A doesn't belong to you. It was legally purchased by Ms. Langford months ago." "I don't care when she bought it," Marcus shouted, spit flying from his lips. He pointed at Elena. "She's a nobody. I am a Diamond Elite Titanium member. My assistant called your VIP desk recently, and they assured me they would bump someone to get me on this flight. I am not flying in the back of the plane with the cattle." Elena, who had remained terrifyingly silent for the last several minutes, finally spoke. "Fascinating," Elena said. Her voice was no longer a whisper. It was the cold, clinical tone of a prosecuting attorney holding a smoking gun. "So, let the record reflect that you actively conspired with an airline representative to illegally revoke a confirmed booking, bypassing the federally mandated solicitation for volunteers entirely because you believe your frequent flyer status supersedes contract law." Marcus sneered at her, his face a mask of ugly, unfiltered arrogance. "This is the real world, sweetheart. Wealth and status dictate the rules, not little rule books. I'm taking seat 1A, and you're going to take your kid to coach where you belong." He turned his back on Elena and began to storm toward the aircraft door. "Officers," Derek Hale barked, his voice cracking like a whip. The 4 airport police officers who had been watching the corporate drama unfold with wide eyes snapped to attention. "Mr. Langford is no longer a ticketed passenger on this flight," Derek stated, his eyes boring into Marcus's back. "His boarding pass is hereby revoked. If he attempts to board that aircraft, he is trespassing on federal property." Marcus stopped dead in his tracks. He slowly turned around, his face flushing a dangerous shade of magenta. "You are revoking my ticket? You're kicking me off the plane?" "You are a disruptive passenger, sir," Derek said, echoing the exact phrase Brittany had used against Elena just moments prior. You are refusing a lawful instruction from airline management. Step away from the aircraft. No! Marcus screamed, grabbing the handrail of the jet bridge. I am getting on this plane. I have a meeting in London. It was the opening the police officers needed. Having stood idly by while a mother was harassed, they were more than eager to assert their authority on a belligerent, screaming man who was actually breaking the law. The lead officer stepped forward, his hand resting heavily on the handcuffs at his belt. Sir, you have been denied boarding. You need to come with us right now, or you will be placed under arrest for criminal trespass and interfering with flight operations. Don't you dare touch me, Marcus spat, shoving the officer's hand away. That was his final mistake. In a flurry of motion, two officers grabbed Marcus by the arms, twisting him around and slamming him face first against the ribbed metal wall of the jet bridge. The heavy metallic clink of handcuffs ratcheting shut echoed loudly. Marcus yelped in pain, his briefcase dropping and spilling expensive leather-bound notebooks and pens across the dirty carpet. Marcus Langford, you are under arrest, the officer stated coldly, patting the struggling man down. You have the right to remain silent, though I highly suggest you start using it immediately. You're making a mistake, Marcus whined, his bravado entirely crushed under the weight of the police officers. She's the one you should be arresting. Look at her. Does she look like she belongs in first class? Get him out of here, Derek ordered, waving his hand in disgust. The officers hauled the sputtering, furious millionaire back up the jet bridge, his polished Italian leather shoes dragging awkwardly on the floor. His shouts faded into the distance, leaving the entrance to the aircraft completely, blissfully quiet. Derek Hale took a long, shuddering breath, straightening his tie. He turned back to Elena, who was still standing in the exact same spot, her posture unbroken, her expression unreadable. Ms. Langford, Derek said, his voice dripping with absolute reverence. The path is clear. Seats 1A and 1B have been completely sanitized and prepped. Your luggage has already been verified as priority loaded. Is there absolutely anything else we can do for you? Elena looked down at Miles. The little boy was staring wide-eyed up the jet bridge, where the angry man had just been dragged away in handcuffs. Miles, Elena said gently, her voice instantly softening. Are you okay, baby? Miles looked up at his mother. A slow, awestruck smile spread across his face. Mommy, you really are a superhero. Elena let out a small, genuine laugh, the first crack in her armor since they left the lounge. No, sweetie, I'm just a lawyer. Come on, let's go see those pods. She took his hand. As they stepped toward the aircraft door, Derek scrambled out of the way, bowing slightly. Standing in the doorway waiting for them was Lena Hart. The flight attendant looked as though she was about to face a firing squad. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, and she was forcing a smile so wide and unnatural it looked painful. Welcome aboard flight to London, Ms. Langford, Master Miles, Lena said, her voice shaking slightly. It is an absolute honor to have you flying with us today. Elena paused at the threshold. She didn't glare at Lena. She didn't yell. She simply looked the flight attendant directly in the eyes. It was a look of quiet, absolute dominance. Lena, Elena said softly. Yes, ma'am, Lena squeaked. My son likes apple juice, Elena stated. With exactly 2 ice cubes, I drink sparkling water with a twist of lime. We will not be disturbed during the meal service as he needs to sleep, and if anyone on this flight, passenger or crew, speaks to me with anything less than absolute professional courtesy, I will ensure that the FAA conducts an audit of your entire cabin crew division. Am I perfectly clear? Crystal clear, Ms. Langford? Lena nodded frantically. Right this way, please. They stepped into the first-class cabin. It was an oasis of tranquility. The heavy sound-dampening walls of the Boeing 777 blocked out the noise of the airport. Soft ambient blue lighting illuminated the massive private suites. The seats were upholstered in rich cream-colored leather, with massive entertainment screens and sliding privacy doors. Miles gasped, dropping his yellow backpack on the floor. "Mom, it's like a spaceship." He scrambled into seat 1B, immediately finding the electronic control panel and pressing a button that made the footrest hum and rise. Elena watched him, the heavy knot of tension in her chest finally dissolving. She placed her designer bag in the overhead compartment and sank into seat 1A. The leather was soft, the seat incredibly spacious. It was exactly what she had paid for. It was exactly what she deserved. Before she could even buckle her seatbelt, a shadow fell over her suite. Elena looked up. Standing in the aisle was a distinguished-looking man in his late 50s, wearing the crisp white shirt, 4 gold stripes, and heavy blazer of an airline captain. He held his pilot's hat under his arm. His name badge read, Captain Harlan Brooks. "Miss Langford," Captain Brooks said, his voice deep and sincere. He did not look terrified like Derek or Lena. He looked deeply, genuinely ashamed. "I am the pilot in command of this aircraft. I was just briefed by operations on what transpired at the gate." Elena remained silent, waiting. "As the captain, everything that happens on my aircraft and the gateway leading to it is ultimately my responsibility," Brooks continued, bowing his head slightly. "The way you and your son were treated was racist, classist, and completely unacceptable. It goes against everything I believe in as a pilot. I have already filed an internal union grievance against the gate staff involved." Elena's expression softened slightly. "I appreciate that, Captain. I have 2 daughters of my own," Brooks said, looking over at Miles, who was now fully engrossed in an animated movie on his screen. "If someone had treated them the way my crew treated you today, I don't know if I would have had the restraint you showed. I just wanted to personally apologize and to assure you that for the flight, you are the most important people on this airplane." "Thank you, Captain Brooks," Elena said, offering him a small, polite nod. "Have a safe flight." "We will, ma'am," Brooks replied, putting his hat back on. He turned and walked back into the cockpit, the heavy, reinforced door clicking shut behind him. A moment later, Lena practically glided over to the suite, carrying a silver tray. On it rested a crystal glass of sparkling water with a lime twist and a smaller glass of apple juice with exactly 2 perfectly square ice cubes. Besides, the drinks was a small velvet-lined box containing high-end noise-canceling headphones and a sealed amenity kit from a luxury French skincare brand. "Your drinks, Ms. Langford," Lena whispered, placing them down gently. "And the chef wanted me to inform you that we have held the premium filet mignon for you should you choose to dine with us tonight." "That will be fine, Lena," Elena said, taking a sip of the water. "Thank you." Lena retreated as quickly as she could without running. Elena reached over the low partition dividing their seats and stroked Miles's hair. The plane's engines began to whine, a low, powerful vibration traveling up through the floorboards. Outside the window, the terminal building began to slowly slide backward as the massive aircraft pushed back from the gate. She pulled out her phone one last time. There was a text message from Victor Lang. "Just spoke with Hale again. O'Hare's station manager assures me the problem is handled. Have a good flight, Elena. We'll finalize the Boeing lease when you return." Elena smiled. She typed back a quick reply. "Handled perfectly. See you next week." She switched her phone to airplane mode, slipped it into her blazer pocket, and pressed the button to recline her seat. The battle was over. The corporate titans had bowed. The bullies had been carried away in handcuffs. Now there was nothing left to do but fly. The Boeing 777 ascended through the thick gray cloud cover of Chicago and broke out into the blinding crystalline sunlight of the upper atmosphere. At cruising altitude, the first-class cabin was a sanctuary of unparalleled quiet. The low, steady hum of the massive engines was nothing more than a gentle white noise lullaby, entirely masking the chaos that had transpired just an hour before. Elena Langford sat back in the buttery cream leather of Seat 1A, a glass of perfectly chilled vintage Bordeaux resting on the console beside her. Across the low partition, Miles was fully immersed in his own world. He had finished his apple juice, devoured a warm, freshly baked chocolate chip cookie, and was now deeply captivated by the glowing screen of his entertainment system, wearing his oversized noise-canceling headphones. The mother in Elena watched him with a profound sense of relief. The trauma of the jet bridge, the yelling, the police, the glaring racism disguised as policy had not broken him. She had shielded him from the worst of it, transforming a moment of terrifying vulnerability into a masterclass on standing one's ground. Miles wouldn't remember this trip as the day he was told to go to the back of the line. He would remember it as the day his mother made the world follow the rules. The flight progressed with flawless, almost theatrical precision. Lena Hart, the lead flight attendant, performed her duties with the quiet desperation of an employee trying to save her pension. When dinner was served, Elena's filet mignon was cooked to a flawless medium rare, accompanied by roasted asparagus and a delicate truffle puree. Miles's meal was served on specially warmed plates, customized to his exact picky young preferences. Throughout the flight, Lena never spoke above a respectful murmur, ensuring Elena's glass was never empty and her privacy was entirely absolute. As the cabin lights dimmed to a soft starlit blue for the overnight portion of the flight, Elena reclined her seat into a fully flat, plush bed. She pulled the thick duvet-style blanket over herself. The adrenaline that had fueled her through the gate standoff finally evaporated, leaving behind a deep, satisfying exhaustion. She closed her eyes and, for the first time in weeks, slept soundly. When Elena woke, sunlight was streaming through the aircraft windows, illuminating the sprawling historic patchwork of London below. The descent into Heathrow Airport was smooth, the heavy landing gear touching down with barely a jolt. As the aircraft taxied to the terminal, Captain Harlan Brooks's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London. On behalf of the entire crew, we apologize for the delay at departure, but we hope your flight was nothing short of exceptional." The moment the seatbelt sign chimed off, Lena was at Elena's suite, gently pulling back the privacy divider. "Ms. Langford, we have a private jet bridge exit arranged for you. You will disembark first." Elena helped Miles with his yellow backpack and took his hand. As they walked toward the exit, Captain Brooks stood by the cockpit door, offering them a sharp, respectful salute. Stepping off the plane, Elena expected the standard bustling terminal of Heathrow. Instead, standing at the very top of the jet bridge, cordoned off from the public, was a tall, sharply dressed British man holding a sleek black iPad that simply read Langford. "Ms. Langford?" the man asked, stepping forward with a crisp, polite bow. "I am Elliot Lang, Vice President of European Operations for Transglobal Airlines. Mr. Hale, our CEO, instructed me to meet you at the gate personally." Elena raised an eyebrow, adjusting her designer blazer. "Mr. Lang, I see word travels fast." "Faster than our aircraft, ma'am," Elliot said, with a small, self-deprecating smile. "I have a private buggy waiting to take you through an expedited diplomatic customs lane. Furthermore, your baggage has already been retrieved by our concierge team and loaded into a private car waiting curbside." As they rode through the sprawling terminal on the electric cart, bypassing thousands of weary travelers, Elliot handed Elena a thick embossed envelope. "From corporate headquarters," Elliot explained softly. "Inside, you will find a full, unconditional refund for your original ticket price processed this morning. Additionally, both you and your son have been upgraded to lifetime Diamond Elite Titanium status. You will never fly commercial with us again without the highest level of priority. Elena slid the envelope into her bag. And the staff involved? Brittany Langford was officially terminated an hour ago for violating Department of Transportation regulations, Elliot confirmed, his tone professional and uncompromising. Furthermore, you will be pleased to know that Marcus Langford's arrest made the early morning news cycle in Chicago. Northgate Capital issued a press release recently, confirming they have placed him on indefinite administrative leave pending a behavioral review. Elena looked down at Miles, who was happily swinging his legs off the side of the moving cart, pointing at the massive planes outside the windows. The bullies had not just been stopped. They had been entirely dismantled. The system that had tried to crush her had been forced to bend the knee. They breezed through customs in moments. Stepping out into the cool, damp London air, a sleek, black, chauffeur-driven Jaguar was idling at the curb. The driver held the rear door open. "Enjoy London, Ms. Langford," Elliot Lang said, taking a respectful step back. "And once again, on behalf of Trans-Global Airlines, we are profoundly sorry." "Thank you, Elliot," Elena said smoothly. She climbed into the plush leather interior of the Jaguar, pulling Miles in beside her. The heavy door clicked shut, sealing them inside their private, luxurious bubble. Miles pressed his face against the window, his eyes wide as the car pulled away from the airport and headed toward the historic skyline of the city. "Mom," Miles whispered, entirely mesmerized. "Are we going to rule London too?" Elena smiled, leaning back into the headrest and closing her eyes. "Just for the week, baby. Just for the week." If Elena's story of shutting down corporate bullies, demanding respect, and protecting her son's dignity resonated with you, do not let this message stop here. We all deserve to take up space and demand what we are owed without apology. Like this video to show your support for Elena's incredible, undeniable victory. Share this story with your friends, family, and anyone who needs a powerful reminder to never back down when they know their rights. And make sure to subscribe to our channel for more thrilling, real-life stories of everyday people turning the tables on corrupt systems.